Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable advisors across the country. And joining me on this segment is Michael Brodsky. He's the author of Incremental Improvements, Change Your Life One Small Step at a Time. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.
Michael, tell me a little bit about your work, and specifically, who are the types of clients that you specialize in helping?
Sure. Well, I work as a financial advisor. I've been doing this for 24 years now. I generally work primarily with a lot of successful professionals and business owners, also a lot of folks who have since retired. So just really helping families in terms of managing their wealth and planning for the future.
Tell me a little bit about your book. Did you write this to help that specific segment of the audience, or tell me what inspired you to write Incremental Improvements?
Sure, absolutely. The book right here, Incremental Improvements, Change Your Life One Small Step at a Time, really came from some of the conversations that I was having with clients, and even as I was doing, for example, meetings with 401k meetings for different companies. A lot of times I would find that people were asking me questions, not just about the money, but in a lot of cases about other aspects of their lives. And I found myself trying to sort of craft the messages that I was sharing with people and sharing with potential clients. And over time, I sort of developed this sort of these notes and these messages and these stories that I was telling. And over time, I kind of realized maybe there's a book here. And I eventually was able to kind of put it all together into this sort of a format. So on the one hand, there's definitely a financial component in the book. It's certainly the longest chapter, but a lot of the other chapters actually get into other aspects of other people's lives, ways to make improvements in a more manageable way.
So for those folks that you help, the questions that they do ask, did you find a common theme, or is there a common concern that everybody seems to rally around or have a very similar or common challenge that they share? What's their biggest challenge?
You know, it's interesting. I think when you really think about the common theme that runs through all of this, it sort of comes down to, if you think about goals, or even, here we are getting close to the end of the year, people start to think about New Year's resolutions. A lot of times people will sort of set a goal or make a New Year's resolution that is kind of a big one, right? So people might say, I want to be a millionaire. I want to make $1 million. I want to lose 30 pounds. Whatever it might be, there's usually some kind of a big goal. I want to run a marathon. And they set the goal, and sometimes they set it a little too high, or they think a little too big. And what ends up happening is then when they realize if it's not going to happen instantaneously, if it's not going to happen overnight, they give up. It's a lot easier to just kind of abandon their dreams, their goals, and just kind of keep doing what they've been doing. So what we really try to focus on in the book especially is this whole idea of taking smaller steps. What one thing can you do today to get yourself a little bit closer to that goal? If you're trying to lose weight, you're not going to lose weight overnight, but if you kind of figure out, can I cut a few calories out of my diet each day? Or can I exercise a little bit more? What little things can you do on a day-to-day basis and turn those into habits so that over time, you can eventually get closer to that goal you're aiming for.
Great insight. So, Michael, tell me what about this recent pandemic? Has it shifted either any of the advice that you give out, or has it just shifted the mindset in the folks and what they're focusing on? What is the pandemic, in your observation? How has it impacted your industry?
It's interesting. I think ultimately, because much of what we do is really long-term focused, we're really trying to get people ready for retirement down the road. We're trying to get them thinking about how they can afford to send the kids and the grandkids off to college. We're trying to get them to think about how to maximize the amount of wealth that's going to be transferred from one generation to the next. So none of that really changes. Really what I would say is that with the pandemic, I think a lot of people are kind of thinking again about how to get back to normal, how to sort of deal with the pandemic and this illness and try to stay safe, try to stay healthy. One of the biggest changes, I guess, would be for a lot of our retired clients. They're not traveling as much as they used to. Certainly that was a big part of their retirement, was maybe traveling the world or taking cruises and going off to see the grandkids. And because of the pandemic, a lot of that stopped. So what's interesting is I guess there may have been some unintentional extra savings or reduced spending as a result of the pandemic. We're starting to see maybe a bit of a return to normal, but then of course now with the new variant, who knows where we go from here. But to a large extent, the goals and the objectives still remain more or less the same.
Have you seen, as you know, we live in a world of information overload and everybody kind of Googles anything they want, but there's got to be a ton of like misinformation or lack of information out there. What are the biggest myths or misconceptions that you've found that seem to keep people stuck?
You know, I guess to some extent, you kind of hit the nail on the head in the sense that because of the internet or being able to do an internet search, you can find a lot of information. So it can almost be overwhelming. People have almost unlimited access to all sorts of information, but the reality is it's very hard on the one hand to sort of take that all in, digest it, and try to figure out what's appropriate for any one individual situation. So I think where a financial advisor can sort of add some value is trying to help navigate those waters and trying to figure out for an individual client, what really should they be doing? Certainly for someone who's willing to spend hours and hours surfing the internet for the information they're looking for, and if they're willing to read a lot of different financial publications and watch all of the financial media that's available, whether it's on TV or on the internet, I suppose you could do this on your own. You could certainly make your own decisions about how to invest for the long term and plan for the future. But I think working with a professional oftentimes will provide maybe a better sense of guidance, and more importantly, hopefully free up your time to do more productive things. A lot of the people that come to us are coming to me because they want to focus on their jobs. They want to focus on their families. They don't want to spend time surfing the internet or watching all the financial news channels. So that's really where we can add some value, is helping to sift through all that information that's out there. It can be a little bit overwhelming.
I'm imagining if you have another 20 years and time to figure it out on your own, you should go ahead and do that. But I can only imagine it just gets more confusing. So, Michael, what about, like, as you start to work with folks, do you find anybody in their financial houses, do you find them making any big, glaring, common mistakes or falling into common pitfalls that everybody seems to make as a result of maybe misinformation?
I guess one of the more common things is I think people have a tendency to kind of follow what their friends are doing, follow what their neighbors are doing. So especially, at any given point in time, the financial media will tend to focus on a certain topic, or they'll kind of tell you what's performing well right now. So I think a lot of investors will make the mistake of saying, well, gee, everyone else I know is invested into this, whatever this might be. And so they sort of follow that and invest in the same things everyone else is investing in. And the challenge with that is, by the time you're hearing about an investment that has performed well, the real question is, are you buying in at the wrong time? Are you getting in too late? And I think what a financial advisor can do is help to sort of sort through all of that noise and try to figure out where the values are in the markets. What investments do make sense, and how do you build a portfolio that's going to be properly diversified and not taking on too much risk, trying to minimize the amount of risk that you're taking while still ultimately achieving the goals you're aiming for. So I think that would probably be it. A lot of people just, maybe if they're not completely comfortable and familiar with the markets, they just do what everyone else is doing, and that's not always the best strategy.
Right on. Michael, take us back a little bit. Before you became an author, before you wrote the book, before you became a financial advisor, what even inspired you to get into this field and start to help people get their financial houses in order? How did you get started?
Well, for me, it was really when I was an undergraduate at Yale University. I was studying economics, and I had the privilege, really, of working with David Swenson, who managed the Yale Endowment for many years, legendary portfolio manager. He passed away earlier this year, sadly. But having studied with him and kind of seeing how he managed that Yale endowment, some of the changes that he made in terms of the strategies, which now, years later, many other endowments, many other big universities or foundations or pension plans are following those same kind of investment strategies. So being able to study from him, or even Robert Shiller, a Nobel Prize winner for economics, was one of my finance professors as well. And so I was very fortunate to have some great mentors, some great professors who kind of pointed me in this direction. And I was just fascinated by all of that and by the markets, and went on to get my MBA from Duke University, and again, sort of following that path. And it's interesting because along the way, I actually did take a bit of a side road, in the sense that I worked for several years as a television news producer before I eventually became a financial advisor as my full-time job. But I've really just always been fascinated by companies, by investing, by the markets, and more importantly, really just helping other people to sort of navigate these waters. Even when I was a producer, television news producer, a lot of people would sort of come to me and ask me for advice on what they should be doing in terms of how they invest in their 401ks and things like that. So it was sort of a natural progression to kind of start doing this professionally as a financial advisor.
Terrific. Michael, for folks listening who would love to speak with you, and they need your help in getting their financial houses in order, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Sure. You can definitely visit my website, www.ameriprise.com.co. So if you go to ameriprise.com, of course, that'll take you to the corporate website. If you go to ameriprise.com.co, that'll take you to my website. Also, for those who are interested in the book, Incremental Improvements, Change Your Life One Small Step at a Time, of course, it's available through Amazon or Barnes & Noble, both in paperback and also on Kindle. But for anybody who would like to just download the book for free, I do offer the PDF version of the book for free at www.incrementalimprovements.com. So if you go to incrementalimprovements.com, you can definitely find the book right there as well.
Michael, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate the invitation.
That was Michael Brodsky. He's the author of Incremental Improvements, Change Your Life One Small Step at a Time. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.